Over the next half hour, you're going to meet a growing group of men and women who've kept their spark of creativity. Most importantly, you'll learn new ways to use your own creative talents. Welcome to Art Is. Today we're going to take you along Mobile Bay's eastern shore to Point Clear, Alabama, to meet Winston Groom, the New York Times bestselling author of Forrest Gump. We are going to start the show with the creator of Forrest Gump, Winston Groom. He also co-authored Conversations with the Enemy, which was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize in 1984. Behind all the awards, it's interesting to learn his dream to become a writer was sparked by a writing contest sponsored by the Mobile Press-Register.
I was 8, and they had a contest at the Mobile Press-Register every year around Christmas time. For little kids, they had a kids page then to write a Christmas story. So I wrote a Christmas story, and it won the prize. And I won a copy of Grimm's Fairy Tales, if I remember right. And the interesting thing is Truman Capote used to always say he won that contest, and they can't find any record of that. But they did find a record of me, and they sent me a copy of it. That was my first experience when I was 8 years old. I grew up here in Mobile, Alabama, and I went to UMS, and I went to the University of Alabama. And then I went into the Army because I was in the ROTC at the university in 1961, 62, before there was a Vietnam War. But when I got out of the Army ROTC, there was a Vietnam War. So they shipped me over as a young second lieutenant. And I spent most of that time with the 4th Infantry Division. And when I came back, I knew I wanted to write. In college, I had been the editor of the humor magazine, the Mahout, and also a literary magazine called Comment. And I looked around, and finally found a job in Washington at the Washington Star, the newspaper. And so I became a journalist, and I was there for 8 or 9 years. And at some point, I knew I wanted to write a novel about the war in Vietnam. And I didn't want to be like so many other newspaper reporters who in their desk drawer have a bag with a bottle of bourbon in it and an unfinished novel manuscript in the other drawer. So I resigned and I went to New York and sat down and wrote my novel, and it was published. And I've been writing novels, mostly novels, ever since. I do write other things. I write histories, I write occasionally a biography, magazine pieces. I mean, my mother was an English teacher for many years, and her specialty was Shakespeare. And so when I was a little kid, I mean, I knew Macbeth. They took me to see the movie when I was about 10, that thing with Orson Welles. When I watched Macbeth, I knew the lines. And my father was a lawyer. He sort of took a dim view of being a writer because, you know, an old-fashioned kind of guy. He thought, you know, you need to have something that you got to make a living at, and you know, do it for a few years, but don't, you know, do something and wind up when you're 35 years old, you don't have a job. But I think he certainly saw over the years that I did fine. He was very pleased with it. Well, I had been coming down. I was living in New York, and I'd been coming down in the wintertime, staying at Robbie's house, and one of the reasons I was coming down here was to see my father. He was quite old then. He was in his 80s. And I'd go over and have lunch with him 2 or 3 times a week. And on one of these occasions, he started reminiscing about his childhood growing up in Mobile around the turn of the century. And he recollected this young man in their neighborhood who was retarded. And all the other kids used to tease him and chase him and call him names and so on. And at some point, this young man's mother taught him how to play the piano. And so you had this sort of specter of beautiful piano music wafting out of this house in the old hot, dusty streets in turn of the century Mobile, Alabama. And the other kids decided after that that, well, that wasn't much, that he did have some talent, and so they sort of took him under their wing and protected him after that. And I thought, when I was driving back to Point Clear from Mobile, I think, you know, maybe I can use this as a scene somewhere in some book. So I sat down to make some notes, and by midnight that night, I had chapter 1 written of Forrest Gump. This came to me. Well, it just keeps you a lot busier. But that's okay, I can handle that. You know, you're only as famous as your last book. And so I mean, it hasn't changed me much. I mean, I've been able to upgrade our brand of toilet paper a little and, you know, a few things. But, you know, basically, it hasn't changed a whole lot. I was pretty famous before Forrest Gump came out, just not, you know, as much. Now, I mean, you know, whatever you call fame. I mean, you know, you recognize when you walked into a bookstore or somewhere, even before Forrest Gump, people knew who I was, because I'd written about 8 books before that.
I hope you have a great week until we meet again on Art Is.